All right, welcome to Concurrency's product development series. We're talking about how you can transform your business with appropriate product development initiatives, how you can think about your business in different ways, how you can transform the way you bring your product to market, and especially how you can think about the way you structure your organization to be able to do that well. On this conversation today, we have a group of experts that are fantastic. We'll start off a little bit with just introducing ourselves. So I'm Nathan Lesnowski. I'm Concurrency's Chief Technology Officer. I'm a Microsoft MVP. I'm a longtime consulting veteran and glad to be here with you today talking about innovation. And then we have Lewin. Lewin is a principal architect with Concurrency, another Microsoft MVP. Say hi, Lewin.
Hi, everyone. How's it going? I'm a Microsoft MVP, principal architect, and I'm part of the Concurrency team for a good 5-6 years, and I've been consulting for over 20 years now. Nice to be here.
Awesome. Thanks, Lewin. And then we also have Brian Hayden. Brian is a solutions architect. He has been in consulting for many, many years, an expert and an excellent executive guide for many of our customers. Thank you for being here, Brian.
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. Glad to be here. Glad to do these webinars again.
And then also Eric Korbinski. Eric is also a solutions architect, is a consulting veteran as well. He has had a lot of experience on the business apps side of consulting, spending a lot of time with financial services customers, thinking about how they go to market, how they bring innovative capabilities to their clients and their parts of their business. So welcome to the conversation, Eric.
Thanks, Nate. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So today we're going to talk a little bit about apps and products and how you can climb the maturity curve. So to do that, we're going to start by spending a little time talking about where companies might exist on that maturity curve and how you can climb it. Where are you on the maturity curve? Why are you there? And what do you need to do to be able to move up it? So let's talk a little bit about what this means and what it means to climb it. So on the lower left-hand corner, what you can see is we've identified the lowest maturity of a company that would be on the apps and products maturity curve. Lowest company on that maturity curve would be one that we call legacy. They would be one that is continuing to deliver from a low-tech business that is serving a set of previously established customers, and it has boxed itself into that selling model as a result of that way of distributing. Think of it as a business that may even be successful and profitable, but one that has really constrained itself to the way it distributes itself in the legacy tech business. Like, let's say it's Bob's Bait Shop. Bob's Bait Shop doesn't have a tech distribution mechanism. It doesn't distribute all over the world. It doesn't think about changing its market. It distributes bait to fishermen from this specific location to go out and fish and get some benefits from it. But it's a tiny little business, and it doesn't really think about itself in a bigger industry changing way. It just keeps doing what it's been doing. And that can be okay if that's sort of your lifestyle business that you're running, but it's not a way to necessarily grow a business to industry changing space, or maybe growing your business in a way that helps you to monetize on your customers and deliver more value to them. It allows you to, legacy businesses just kind of keep delivering what legacy businesses want. As you climb up this maturity curve, you get to this legacy product space, which is a slightly more customer aligned version of a legacy business. So think about it as a way where I go into Bob's Bait Shop and I might have went in there to get some bait so I can go out and fishing for the day. But I know that when I go out there fishing for the day, maybe I want to get a soda or a candy bar or some extra, packs of beer or something that I can go along with me. Up in the UP, we call those party stores. You go in there and you get your bait and you get your food and you get your stuff that you're going to go out fishing. And it's got a little bit more. It's customer aligned. It feels like it's serving the customers. Feels like it's aligned to what they're asking for at that given moment. But it's still not a scaled platform. It's not truly meeting the customer where they are. It's meeting them in a space where I'm giving them something, but it's not really still scaling up on the space that the customer is getting something more industry changing from me. When you move up the maturity curve further, you're trying to go outside of where you're at as a business and try to go to where the customer actually is. So maybe instead of me going to Bob's Bait Shop, I'm simply backing my boat into the water and everything I need is available right there boat side. I can get it right as I'm backing it in. I don't have to go to Bob's Bait Shop to go get my worms or my food or my whatever. It's right there as I'm backing it in. I can get it right when I need it. I bring it out and I bring it out to my boat and I'm out there fishing. Maybe even I'm getting to a point where I'm shipping it to me ahead of time and I'm getting it before I even decide to go fishing, and it's delivered to me at a moment's notice, ready for me to go. So I'm moving beyond this state of like the legacy business that's barely kind of delivering for its customers. And I'm thinking about what my customer needs and when they need it. So I start to save them time. I'm meeting them where they are. And by meeting them where they are, I'm delivering something faster to them. I'm delivering a capability to them over time. Now, you think about this in a digital space, maybe it's about, I have a fishing app and I know that I'm going fishing on these days and I'm getting my product ahead of time. Now, when you think about this monetization space, this is where you're really thinking about building a platform that my customers are met at. Maybe I have an app. My customers are interacting with that application. They're getting the content they need at the right time. Maybe it's my bait. Maybe it's my food that I ordered for the day. Maybe it's a financial model that I'm interacting with to see the investments that I have. It's something that I'm delivering to me as a consumer. I've had a relationship with them. I've met them where they're at with a platform that's starting to think about it in a modern way. I'm maybe even doing some cross-selling there. But then what I'm doing is I'm engaging that customer in further monetization. As a result of that relationship that I've created with them, where I've met them where they're at, I'm now looking for other things that I can sell them. I'll give you an example from the Starbucks space. What Starbucks has really done is they've transformed from being a company where I physically went to the coffee shop to a place where I still go to the coffee shop, but I might have actually ordered that coffee ahead of time from my app. And now when I go into that app, I'm further monetizing on that relationship by asking them what other things they might like based upon the context of that day. Is it in the morning? Oh, maybe you like to have the sandwich that you're getting to start off your day. Or maybe you want to have, I know that you like to buy this certain set of things, so I'm even going to preload your cart around those capabilities. I'm going to start to think about that in a way which further monetizes my customer. So my lifetime value of my customer raises based upon my relationship with them, what I know about them. So I'm starting to not just meet them in that space and try to enable them to be able to get their order placed faster, but I'm monetizing further on that relationship. Even further up this space is I'm starting to disrupt the market itself. For example, a coffee shop that does not have a self-ordering capability, where I can't just open up the app and know what I'm going to get that day. I might not even want to use it. Maybe that becomes my normative way of buying coffee now. Maybe I even get to a point where the Starbucks is now running with 2 people instead of 3. Maybe it's even running with 1 person instead of 3. It starts to get to a position where my expectations around the market change. My expectations around what a normal experience looks like shifts to a different type of normal experience, and I'm disrupting it by bringing it to the customer in a way that they would expect now. This was something that Starbucks really did as a result of COVID, was the interaction that I expect is no longer walking up to the store and expecting someone to give me the coffee. It is typically, I'm going to order it on an app and I'm going to pick it up later. At least 50% of the orders are now delivered that way. And now you get up into industry changing, and it might be something completely different. It might be that nobody ever goes to a store to get their coffee anymore. Maybe they're just delivering it home again. Maybe people are back making coffee at home and getting better and smarter and more capable coffee machines in their homes. Maybe it's the sort of idea around Keurig. People never really liked grinding things in the first place. They never really liked the idea of having to go out and get the coffee and grind it and put it in the thing. And maybe I can optimize that whole process. Industry changing is about changing not only the expectations of maybe a particular store and how I get something from a store, but am I going to the store in the first place? What's the relationship between me and the product? And do I even need a store to be able to get that product? And are people even moving back towards something like healthier living, and is the store part of that journey? And maybe there's another way I need to meet that industry in a new spot. So you can see how this starts to climb a maturity curve from what we talked about earlier, which is kind of a standalone business doing something really basic, all the way up to a company that's starting to think about changing the industry itself, and maybe even disrupting their own platform. Just Starbucks thinking about maybe I don't even have as many stores as I used to have. maybe that's a sacred cow in a sense to their business in the past. So the apps and products maturity curve is about climbing it in a way which allows your business to be winning in the context of serving the customer's real need. So let's talk a little bit about strategy and how that fits into thinking about this overall picture. I'm going to ask Lewin, maybe you can start on this context, and other guys, you can kind of pop in here as well. So Lynn, kind of take it away. Tell us a little bit about innovation and the place that it plays in the overall picture of creating a product journey and disruption.
Sounds good. Glad we do that, right? Innovation is actually more of a concept of trying to get something new into the marketplace, right? It's something to quote unquote innovate. Funny enough, right? If we actually did a survey and somebody did, right? In this case, McKinsey did. They did a poll of senior global executives, and they actually found something very interesting, right? This revealed that 84% of the global executives believes that innovation is extremely important to their company. Let's go to the next slide real quick. However, right, only 6% of these executives are satisfied with their performance in this area. Why is that, right? Because innovation is one of those things that are sometimes easy to think of. However, right, it's hard to execute at times. However, depending on the right framework and the right know-how with the right team, it can be actually made easier as well. Let's go to the next slide again. All right. In the case of innovation, we actually have a couple of different types of innovation that we're going to look at, right? Let's start with sustaining innovation. Sustaining innovation is one of those innovations, type of innovations where as time goes on, right, your performance and your scale of these various activities have to keep climbing up along with the scale. So far, right, we have seen that on a lot of these areas, right, from the 1970s to today, we see that with computer chips, for example, right, they actually went from a 25 megahertz chips all the way down to we're looking at 4, 5, 6 gigahertz chips that are coming in with multiple core, etc. As time went on, right, these performance are coming along. However, there is a catch to that as well, right? Those are also very, very hard to actually, maintain this space as well. You cannot keep, pouring time and, money into this type of innovation to keep sustaining. A lot of these will actually plateau out as well, depending on what you are putting into this. So there is a caveat to these. However, right, this is the part where if you are ahead of the game, you are actually you're still going to be the winner in this particular case. Let's move on to the next slide real quick. However, right, if we look at the sustaining innovation, there is also another story to be told here. When you look at that sustaining innovation, let's look at the computer chips again, right? All of us actually have computers, and obviously we're talking to one right now, right? We actually look at a Pentium, for example. Let's go to Intel again. They have a couple of different chipsets, right? Chip series that they are looking at. For example, most, if I'm a developer, if I'm actually going to be writing a lot of code, or if I'm actually going to be doing a lot of data modeling, for example, I need something with a lot of processing power. So I want the best of the best, right? I want to actually have that, the Core i7, i9s with the highest amount of CPUs, cores, etc. On the other hand, right, my parents, for example, who are retired, who actually don't need that power anymore, right? They're just there to check on the emails occasionally, or check on Facebook and wave to people and so on and so forth, and occasional messaging, right? Should be able to sustain with a good enough performance package. In this case, right, Celeron Gold or a Pentium Gold models will be perfectly fine, or even lower end models like back in the day, Atoms, so on and so forth, right? So there are different scaling of innovation as well. In this particular case, Intel decided to keep pushing the innovation boundaries with the best performance on a sustaining innovation model. At the same time, right, if there is enough to actually get you going beyond on this desired performance, right? Well, if there is good enough, and if you are beating your competition, right? Hey, if I can do everything else slightly better than what is desired of a particular market space, you are going to be doing a bang up job in terms of keeping the innovation curve in your production cycle, and you're going to be gaining that traction and momentum on sustaining your clientele. Let's move on to the next slide. Right, in this case, this is, well, I think it's the same slide, guys. Cut. Now let's talk about a different industry. In this particular case, right, this is a very, very similar industry as well, but there is a slightly different caveat to this sustaining innovation. This is now we're going to talk about low-end disruption. In this particular case, we're going to go to steel industry. We're in the Midwest. Let's talk about steel, right? Back in the early 50s, 60s, and 70s, all the way to about 90s, right? There was one type of steel mill that existed in the U.S. It's called integrated steel mill. They actually integrate everything that you can think of, right? These are huge steel mills, probably the size of a city block. Cities, not city blocks, cities, right? They usually have their own even zip codes in some of these areas, like in Indiana, for example. They actually make anything from rebars all the way to sheet metals. So they are different type of quality of steel, and depending on what it is, right, they actually create. They have different margins, right? Rebar being the lowest amount of type of steel made from recycled material, so on and so forth. So you don't have to be the strongest steel. So somewhere around the 1973-ish, right? Let's go to the next segment real quick. The concept of mini mills came about. Mini mills are there to actually come in as a low-end disruptive market. What do they do? Well, mini mills are smaller steel mills that actually use electric arc, right, to actually create steel rather than a different type of molten process. So what they did was, let's go to the next slide. They actually came in from the bottom up, and they actually started, quote unquote, invading the space of the integrated mill, right? And what they did was they looked at a rebar, and they started making rebars in a small mill, like a much smaller space, much smaller energy constraint, etc. So in this particular case, right, mini mills were making margins upwards of 20% margins on this return. So they're very happy. They were extremely happy because they were making money. On the other hand, from the bigger boys, right, the people who are actually doing integrated mills decided that, 7% margin on rebar is not good enough for us anymore. We're actually making money higher up anyway. So let's get out of the market. So let's go to the next slide. They actually move away from the market. They actually got, that market was slowly invaded, right? Slowly taken over by a low-end disruptive markets player with a smaller and much more efficient way of doing things, right? And slowly over time, as you get over, you will see that by the mid-90s, there was only one integrated steel mill left in the United States, because this mini mills concept keep growing up and up and up, and they actually got to a point where they took over. And currently, like I said, right, there's only one integrated mill left. Everybody is now switching to the new concept. So think about that, right? There's one type of innovation called sustaining. This is the low-end disruption. So we can actually look at innovation from different type of perspective. You can actually see innovation coming in from, keeping this momentum going to, hey, let me invade and let me actually go get something and make it better. And I'm going to actually get better than, the previous people that were doing it. And I'm going to make it, quicker, faster, cheaper, et cetera, as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of examples of that. I mean, one example that I could share would be there's a platform that I use, many people use, called Mint. It's a financial planning platform. I was one of the early users of Mint, and its whole initial at the time, I had QuickBooks, like a personal version of QuickBooks. That ironic that they eventually bought them, but I had a personal version of QuickBooks that was a very detailed version of tracking your finances and creating a budget. And Mint, what it did, it automatically captured all your financial records from different platforms and aggregated them into one view, and then try to kind of automatically categorize them for you. At the time, it was really limited. It had very few features. It really didn't even have a budgeting feature, but it provided just enough visibility that I had zero desire to be using anything else at the moment. Like all that complicated stuff up here in this higher level of value curve that QuickBooks was doing, it wasn't that attractive to me. And really what I wanted was this very low end capability that it was starting to provide. And what Mint has done over time is it's continued to add capability after capability after capability to a point where individuals are able to get everything they need now from a Mint type platform. It's basically eliminated any need for a personal version of QuickBooks. Intuit eventually bought them, and it became their main go-to-market platform for interacting with personal individuals. And now they cross-sell that for TurboTax and other platforms because they know everything about you. Now they're going to cross-sell that in other spaces. So they've done a great job of taking something that originally started off with a really limited set of features to capture a market that was previously uncaptured, a whole set of individuals that weren't using anything, and then moving that into more higher and higher capabilities on the maturity curve of features that they now compete all the way up the stack, and even then can cross-sell into other platforms. So it's an interesting story that kind of keeps repeating itself in other verticals.
Yeah, funny enough, right, I actually use Mint, and it's so much of change, right? In the last, I would say, 10 years or so, and they became a whole new animal now compared to when they first started off. It's a low-end disruption market, example right there as well. Now let's talk about innovation and what is the right thing to do, right? It's all about experiences versus time to market. So there is no such right or wrong way of innovating, right? It's all about your customer and audience at the end of the day. If on the left-hand side, right, you are actually looking at a car that is actually coming into production, I think in the next year or two, it's fully loaded, right? All the bells and whistles in terms of self-driving capability, et cetera, are all in there. Probably electric vehicle of some sort, that's actually going to be hitting in a whole different, amazing way, right? That car is for a particular type of people. They are going to be there. That vehicle is created for a particular consumer, right, who wants to enjoy doing certain things. On the right hand side, right, you see the 60 something or 50 something Jeep, right? This is the Jeep that actually won the World War II across many countries, because this is the vehicle that actually carried the arms and ammunition, so on and so forth, right? This Jeep was made particularly to create for a particular condition as well. So sometimes you want to actually have an experience that is more elaborate, that you're actually putting a lot more time and material into it. And sometimes you actually want to purpose build a particular experience for the innovation type as well. Something to think about. Now let's talk about a whole slightly different story, right? Innovation comes in multiple different ways, right? It is about how you deliver and what you deliver. And people talk about disruptive innovation and transformative innovation, right? Sometimes you don't get there right away. Sometimes you have to actually go through various steps, right? Sometimes it might be incremental. Sometimes it might be adjacent, right? When you actually do a tweaking in a disruptive area, it becomes adjacent innovation. Or sometimes you might do adaptive, right? You have to actually tweak it and do how you deliver to create a adaptation of what you are trying to do to eventually get to transformation. Sometimes you can just hit luck and transform right away, depending on if there are other steps that you're looking at. Well, we went through COVID recently, right? So during COVID, guess what I did, just like everybody else did. If you go to the step space real quick, Nathan, I watch a lot of TVs, right? Like a lot of people did, and I caught up a lot of shows, right? And the funny thing is, I come to think about it, and I'm like, hey, what if I watch TV a lot of times? And it turns out I watch it on Netflix, right? Okay, let's go to the next slide. Why do I watch Netflix? Because it's a good platform to watch a lot of streaming services. And then I think about it, right? When about 15 years ago, Netflix wasn't Netflix then, right? Netflix was a little place that was sending out DVDs, right, across the corner from Blockbuster. For those of you who actually know what it was, right? And it was actually competing with Blockbuster. Blockbuster was the leading person in that particular field of in-home entertainment, right? Netflix was a bottom feeder that came in, put a little booth on every single corner of the house, of the drugstore or what have you, that was trying to compete with Blockbuster. So they were the low end innovation that came in. However, right, over time they actually did a bunch of interesting things, right? Netflix did this. So if you go to that, right, they actually get to the point of starting their own original series, but before that, right, they actually trying to get into gaming space. They got into a bunch of different. Bring any single movie or every single DVDs out there. They actually have it in stock, right, for people to watch. Before different type of services came about. Now we're getting to a point where Netflix actually got their own shows, right? They actually, instead of actually being a streaming provider, they figured out that hey, we already have the ability to stream. We might as well make our own content. Why pay the money to somebody else, right? Why pay the money to a different content producer? We can actually make our own content and get into that content space. So they did. Well, this is where, if you were watching news recently, right, this is where the other end of innovation is catching up as well. Now everybody else has actually hit that plateau as well, and Hulu and Paramount and Disney and everybody else has also figured out that this is a way to go, and everybody else get into the bandwagon to a point where now, right, you're no longer innovating, you're all at the level playing field as well. So Netflix, while they were very innovative initially, right, they actually got slowed down as well over time. So this innovation is one of those things where you have to adjust as time goes on, right, to keep you ahead of the game. Otherwise, you're actually going to have caught up, right? Like in this case, they were the first. They were the low end disruption that came up, became the mainstream, and now, right, they're actually being tackled on the different cycle. And Nathan will talk about that in a little bit. But before that, let's go to Brian.
Sure. Actually, it's really interesting when I think about the Netflix story. For me, a big reason for me to move to something like Netflix was to get away from the conglomerate cable company where, I'm spending, $150 a month on a cable bill for a bunch of channels that I don't really want to watch or don't really care about. And so going to a platform like Netflix was, for me, a way to get rid of that beefy cable bill and be able to get content that I enjoyed watching. And, exactly what you're talking about, Lewin, is that there's all these other content providers that are coming out with really great content, and I wind up having a conglomerate of different bills now, and it's not any cheaper for me. So I'm waiting for the next marketplace disruption where Hulu does somewhat of a good job with this of bringing different content providers together, but consolidating some of these platforms where I don't have to subscribe to 5 different platforms anymore, and we'll see where that goes. But hopefully these companies are listening to the podcast so they can, do something about that.
Yeah, there you go. I love it if, I'd like to hear Eric maybe talk a little bit about, we many of these conversations have been around products or a company that sells a product or a manufactured scenario or a distributed scenario. Eric, you've had a lot of experience working with companies that are doing professional services, or they're thinking about client data, or they're thinking about how they organize processes to be able to be more disruptive. When you think about that angle on innovation, what are some of the ways that you've seen companies look at how they look at their customers and how they may become more competitive or more disruptive in those kinds of markets where I'm not necessarily selling like, a physical product or a Netflix or a manufactured thing?
Yeah, right. So you're absolutely right. With the case of something like Netflix, they went on to produce their own content, which is kind of distinct. But when you're talking about dollars, I mean, a dollar's a dollar. There, it's the ultimate commodity. So in professional services and especially financial services, they have to differentiate around relationships and around how they deliver their service versus the actual service itself. And so a lot of what we're seeing is the understanding of the customer being really important. You guys talked a little bit about Mint earlier, and having all of that information potentially available allows people to predict what sorts of products you might want. I know that on the maturity curve, there's a cross-selling opportunity, and that very much is where that comes into play. Additionally, relationships are very important in financial services. So relationships between the provider and the client, but also relationships between the clients or between the prospective clients. So it's very much a trust-driven service, and so recommendations and referrals are hugely important. So the ability to both promote and track those can become hugely important, and to make those connections there, as well as, for instance, we've seen with some of our financial service clients, the managing and helping them visualize and understand the relationships of wealth over time. So kind of keeping money in that same financial services organization as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric. Brian, do you want to tell us a little bit about what makes successful disruptive innovation?
Yes, absolutely. So, there's a lot of stories that we can talk about in terms of what makes a company successful at doing market disruption. First, and one of the key points is that we're in the technology space as a company. Here at Concurrency, this is what we do. We bring machine learning, we bring good data processes, but we, in general, what we're doing is bringing technology to companies. When you think about that maturity curve at the bottom end at Bob's Bait Shop, there's a lack of technology that doesn't enable the growth of the company to be able to meet the customer where they're at. So the first part is to enable technology within your company. The next step is really looking at your business model. And again, we're talking about meeting customers where they're at. But one thing that we're going to look at in a little bit more depth is this idea of bringing a business model that starts to connect with non-consumers, people that aren't currently using your platform. And so there's an idea of, do I protect myself against that low-end disruption where I'm protecting these services so don't get cut out of this marketplace, or do I just look at a whole new opportunity? And most companies that are really successful at this disruptive innovation are actually targeting non-consumers, and they're creating a new market space. Think of Netflix, and we bring this is a common example here. There wasn't a streaming service back then. They were the first to really bring this to the consumers. The only streaming that we had at that time when Netflix was coming to market was the cable services, and it wasn't so much streaming, but there was some limited on-demand content that you could bring in, but it was still, I'm going to turn on the History Channel, I'm going to watch Oak Island. That's what my choice was at 8 o'clock on a Thursday night. And then finally, having a coherent value network. Companies today, as they get to a certain level in their maturity curve and their growth, really are having to rely on networks of partners to be able to cross-sell their services to and make themselves a successful company.
Thinking about financial services, this actually reminds me of PayPal or Venmo, which is where the idea of transferring money was kind of in the beginning, and then now there's a value network of that where, very often you can go online and just pay with your PayPal account.
That's a huge point, Eric. Nice shot. Think about that.
Yeah, I'll give you a real world example. A client that I'm working with right now is facing a challenge with their supply chain. And they've had, this is a huge company. They have about $2 to $3 billion in revenue a year. And one of their major suppliers is not able to keep up with the demand that they have for their product. So they've had to go out and look for new partners in order to fulfill those needs. However, they aren't far enough along the maturity curve, and the new partners aren't willing to do business with them because they can't automate the processes to build orders and receive goods and do that type of thing. So in order for them to get to a disruptive place in the marketplace, which is where this organization wants to go, they have to fix some of these problems in order to enable it.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit about a test that sometimes we give ourselves or think about, and we may not even be thinking about it, but we're actually doing it. Let's pretend that you're in an alley and you're confronted with this person who means you no good. He's not just changing your tire. Doesn't look like a good situation that I want to be in. And on the floor next to me is this pocket of money. It's a nice little piggy bank that's got a whole bunch of opportunity in it that I can take and use and do something really nice with. But right in front of me is this guy, and he's not meaning me a lot of good. The question is, which of these do I deal with first? Which of these situations am I going to try to deal with first? Am I going to try to deal with this person? Am I going to pick up the piggy bank and just kind of hope for the best? What am I going to do? And that's when we think about this constant challenge that we have as business owners, business runners, people who are managing the business, between threat and opportunity, threat and enablement, threat and the ability to bring new capabilities to market. And more often than not, the answer is I'm going to deal with the threat. And the reason why we deal with the threat is because it's coming at us. We feel that threat. We get in the flight or fight response, and we ignore the thing over here, because we're placing ourselves in this position where we have to respond, and sometimes we even respond instinctually to that situation. So when you think about your business, there's always this space that you have in your market, and there's the space in your competitor's market, and then there's this overlap that you're naturally competing with them that represents the threat from your competitor into you and the battle that you're always fighting to be able to maintain what you have. And sometimes, it's may not even be this large, because there's several overlaps between multiple competitors that exist within that space. And the challenge that we have as people running a business is that the actual opportunity responding to that threat isn't quite as dire as the opportunity where I'm standing in that alley and I'm placed in a true flight or fight response. We're maybe over exaggerating the threat from my competitor and then causing me to not pursue the non-consumption opportunity. And this sort of natural tension that exists is why it's so hard for companies to disrupt ourselves. It's hard for companies to disrupt ourselves because our natural response is to think about what we do now, who's trying to take it away from me, and how do I get as much of what I can get as possible. But the opportunity that's right out there in front of us is this non-consumption space that we struggle to fund and we struggle to do well because it doesn't represent the immediate threat. So sometimes in planning, the opportunity is to represent the non-consumption as the threat, because midterm to long term, this becomes the threat to your business, because the non-consumption space, as Lumen showed earlier, the non-consumption space starts to eventually eat away at your business to a position where your business may not be able to serve the same customers because the non-consumption replaced it. And that ends up being the new threat that we didn't realize was coming. So sometimes when we're doing our planning, we need to go toward that opportunity space faster than we typically would, because of the potential that not only is it not just a new opportunity, but it's also a threat to our existing business. And it's better if we're the one doing the disrupting rather than just simply responding to the disruption that happened in the market. And you can think about in the context that, even though Netflix has now run into challenges having to then fight off some of these other competitors that have survived, there's a lot of companies, a lot of content providers left in the wake that weren't able to survive the move toward these new delivery models, especially the cable providers, as an example. So there's always this move between this kind of tension that also then exists in the spectrum. So as we look at disruption, some of it's happening at the lower end, the competitors that aren't current consumers of our platform because they want something simpler than what we deliver today. And at the right-hand side, there's these truly new markets that just straight up don't even exist yet. It's not even just a pivot on something that's delivered. It's a new market that wasn't delivered in the first place. Think space tourism. Like, nobody's doing space tourism yet, but when it is an opportunity, it starts with these really high-end players that are like one of the 3 people going up in the SpaceX experience for the day. But as that continues to lower in cost and lower in cost and lower in cost, it gets to a position where that new market has now been created. You could maybe argue that that's a disruption of just a travel market, but it's fascinating that it is a new market being distributed to a set of people that are trying to do something. And then it disrupts the kinds of experiences that people are getting as the price point lowers. One thing that's also really interesting when you think about what enables this to happen in an organization, it is this concept of psychological safety. In organizations that are successful, people are able to challenge the established business. In an organization that delivers something, it can be really difficult to think about disrupting that business and doing something different, even disrupting yourself. That's why so many successful businesses that do the disruption are focused just on that. They don't have this sort of existing business model that has to be disrupted. They're like going around it. They're a new company. But companies have been very successful at disrupting themselves, and the way they do that is by having psychological safety within the organization to be able to have direct conversations about where the business is going in a non-personalized, non-judgment, non kind of inappropriate way, in a way that allows for us to be able to have less defensiveness, less mistrust, less ignorance around the overall business, be able to talk in a way which is caring personally, challenging directly, and growing through open communication towards some of these really disruptive opportunities that exist. So the question I would ask is, does your business have the right communication style and the openness to the right kind of communication to allow it to unlock the opportunities that are available to it? Does it have the candor and the empathy and the engagement among the teams where people are open to think about what happens if you change the business and open to changing the business if it's the right thing to do? It allows us to be able to start talking about moving the business in the right direction without getting defensive and without getting to a position where we simply lock out the opportunity because we think too much about what we do today. So think about what needs to happen in my team to improve the communication to be able to have the kind of business that can thrive. So now we're going to move a little bit into talking about development teams and pod-based approaches. So if you wouldn't mind, Lewin, tell us a little bit about this picture.
Well, in this picture, right, we're looking at what we think customers need, right? In this case, customer says, "Hey, I want to actually have a experience of riding a bull, right? And taking it up and having fun with it." So what we think comes up to be this, right? However, right, what the customer truly thinks, it happens to be a slightly different image. So setting the expectations right, and making sure that we can understand what a customer truly requires, right, is a highly essential skill that we all need to have to create innovative experiences, right, products. So in this particular case, this is what the customer, we think this is what the customer thinks. We want it. They said, "Hey, I want to actually have a amazing, like riding experience, right? That I feel like, I'm like a child again." Well, what the customer truly want is not that, right? What the customer truly want is, actually, my 2-year-old will probably think this is funny. Let's go to the next slide. The customer truly want is this, right? Like the point where you actually putting your helmet on and they're actually riding with bull by the horn and literally like in a stadium, right? Yes, they are similar experiences and yet profoundly different in terms of the requirement versus the actual outcome of it, right? In this particular case, we actually have to understand the client and understand what they truly need through empathy, through understanding the true requirement of, hey, do they really want it and do they really need it as well? It's not just a want and a need, but can they actually also perform it afterwards, right? Not, so there are a number of key moments that come together to create a solution like this. Let's go to the next slide real quick. When we look at this, right, this is where human-centered design process, right, understanding, ideating, validating the idea, and then building this process come about. And in this case, right, any projects that we should be working on, whether if it is our projects or client projects or your project, right, for that matter, should actually have an understanding of what its true requirements are, and then ideating on these requirements to based on it. And the funny thing is this, right, if you look at this graph, it actually goes up and down. On the other hand, it also goes back and forth as well. So sometimes you can understand, you can ideate, and you can go back and understand it again, and truly, assess the requirements properly, so that you can actually validate it, right? Sometimes you can understand, ideate, validate, and then come back to understand again. So it could actually go back and forth a number of times to actually get a truly creative and innovative product. So a lot of the times we will actually start with a lot of interviews, understanding the personal journeys, understanding the data, sometimes, understanding the functional and true requirements to then actually understand, and then ideate and then validate, right? Sometimes validation is not just nodding heads. Sometimes validation is saying profoundly, no, this is not the way you might want to go down because we have done that before, or this is not a right technology stack for you, or this is not the right, area that we want to actually go down because we have validated some other fields that came out as a negative, results, right? Going back to Nathan's earlier comment, right, of being a, candidly open and truthful about this type of process come into play as well. And then finally, right, building it and then going back and understanding this whole process again. So this is a repeated process that creates a truly, life-changing products in this particular manner. So we will actually follow these processes back and forth. And additionally, I would also create these products in quote unquote what we're calling pods, right? Pods are a definition of teams that may or may not be making one giant product or selective multiple different products that creates a set of features. For example, right, I have in this particular diagram, I have a feature application that is being created by architect, project manager, etc., right, in one pod. On a slightly different pod, right, at the simultaneous, running, I have a such, AI, ML, data science pod that is running with it, run by data scientists, with the data analysts, etc., as well, that can come together to create a better product at the end of the day. And the best part about this particular scenario is that if I want to actually change something, right, if I want to actually create another set of applications, another set of product, for example, I can take the same pod that is great at doing certain set of things and re-employ them and re-engage them in another situation and say, hey, can you actually repeat and create the same thing that you did for a first feature on a different product before, and we can actually get quicker to creating these products, right? Because these are all vetted out. These are proven teams that have actually created this product before. And a lot of the times, right, we actually have a situations where, as a consultancy, right, as concurrency, we might be leading a pod alongside. And we might actually be ingesting, a client's team as well to actually give them knowledge transfers as well at the same time. So some of these can be made more efficiently as well. It doesn't just apply to consultancy, right? We can also do that a number of ways. Additionally, alongside of the pods, right, we can actually we deploy application using agile approach. So we actually look at things like fail fast, fail often, right? I mean, it's a cliche now at this point, and a lot of people say that, hey, let's do that, right? In this particular case, we do trust this is the right way to create this type of application approaches, because the faster we can actually go back, right, going back to the human-centered design as well, the faster we can actually create something, validate it, right, make sure that those are correct, the better we can actually get a much more solid foundation product. Brian, would you like to say something about this? Sorry.
I've had the pleasure of working with, I've lost track, but it's over 50 companies in my consulting career. So it's a lot. So I've seen a lot of different teams and where they are. And before I get to talking about, the higher end, where I see the highest end of maturity, let's talk at the bottom. Let's start at the legacy, the monolithic, companies. These are companies that are typically in highly regulated industries where things don't change very much. Think about your energy companies or even some of your big banks that are building, core banking systems where change is slow, but it's intentionally slow because of, the regulatory climate that they might be in. And because of that, they can't move up the maturity curve or the disruption curve either, because change is intentionally slowed down. These have large teams working on, a single product line. I've been a part of some teams that had a product that had 12 or 13 different Scrum teams all working to build this thing. Each Scrum team was 11 or 12 people. It was huge. It was monolithic. Trying to get something done in a sprint was very, very difficult because of all the teams that you had to go with. As you move up the curve, sort of this plan, build, run is even almost worse than the monolithic legacy. This is where a lot of companies transition some of their development, and they plan it internally, they build it externally, and then they try to run with it. And it's a very difficult space to be in And by throwing a lot of this work over the wall and trying to get it back over the wall, you wind up in a rut that you can't really move yourself out of. But if you are able to move out of the monolithic or the plan, build, run, you can finally get yourself into a functional state. And this is where you start to see teams, I see organizations, they start to get some agile processes built into their development cycle. They haven't really aligned their development teams towards any product or feature that, like Luann had talked about, but there's a team and they're starting to work together and they're cross-functional. They're starting to be cross-functional and they're able to scale up in their velocity and do work. Where teams are starting to get to, where a lot of successful companies are starting to get to in this maturity curve, is that product stage. And Luann's diagram showed it really well, where now I have a team who's dedicated to building this product, or I might have 2 or 3 Scrum teams that are dedicated to building this product, but they're all focused on it. They're cross-functional, they're mature in their process, and they're able to deliver at a very high level in the high level of velocity. And that's where most companies get to, and they're happy with that. And they go back to their management and their senior leaders, and everybody high fives and cheers. I've been recently working with companies that have taken a different approach, and I think this aligns to Concurrency's delivery model as well, where instead it's more of a human-centered design. And when you think about UX and the process, that the understanding process, doing empathy maps helps you to identify the value streams for a company. So companies that are really successful at changing the way their product works and interacts with the customers, identify that customer's journey through their product line, and develops a team that controls that entire value stream. So think of a mortgage company, and you might have that origination aspect of it. There'll be a product team that is completely dedicated to just onboarding and originating, you getting you started down that loan process. And then as you go through anybody that's bought a house before knows that once you start that loan process, there's a lot of work that goes into getting all the documentation together. And that would be an example of another value stream. How do I interact with that customer? How do I get them to a successful place in their journey with our product? And then they move on to the next. And so companies that are doing really, really well have identified their, through the understanding phase, they've identified the value streams based on the customer's journey, and it's really actually a fun process to watch when they get there.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian. All right. Now, our last section here, we're going to talk a little bit about the modularity of systems and some of the underlying components that you need to be successful. So, Luann, do you want to talk a little bit about modular solutions for us?
Sure. This is a very complicated slide, but I'll try to decipher that as painless as we can, right? When we look at a modular solution, or for that matter, right, when anybody look at a solution, we should be looking at a solution on a holistic view first. By going back to the human-centered design as well, we have to look at a solution that touches everything. In this day and age, right, a particular application that we write might be a subset of a bigger solution or a bigger engagement within a client, right? So there is a unified design language that ties up all of these components together so that everything looks cohesively. Where you might be writing inside of a particular solution, right, a suite of applications, you might have a consumer application or a sales application. However, with the right theming and the right lay, right, of the land and the right movement of various different pieces of the UX experiences, you will get a unified design language. Underneath the design language is it's like, think of it like a duck swimming on the water, right? There are a bunch of things that happens underneath the design, that shows up that people interact with. Underneath these, they might have a single sign-on or a client identity access management system, or various different type of secure access layers with APIM, right, layer running underneath all of that as well to make sure that your data is secure. However, right, this particular area doesn't end there, right? There are other areas that come along with it from infrastructure pieces as well. It's not just necessarily on cloud-based. It could be infrastructure and cloud working together to make sure that all of these pieces of these puzzles are all secure accordingly. And then, right, looking at getting rid of the monolithic structures that we talk about, right, going to a singular application and services that you can actually then, interact with, right? So if you're looking at a particular, service or a particular, set of data that you might be looking at a microservice to go fetch the data for you that bubbles up through these security layers, right, all the way back to the top. So you might be looking at microservice, you might be looking at a slightly different solutions that goes up and down. And underneath that, right, is a layer of data. Data is also, we can get into data for another 4 hours on this if we want to, but we don't have time for that, so let's not go there. But data at that point, right, you can actually look at traditional data, whether if it is stored on Azure or on a SQL server somewhere, as well as, right, any other AI-based data that can come along as well. So all of this becomes a whole complete cohesive solution that we have to look at. However, right, they are all modularized. So let's say one day you want to actually move from cognitive services to your own custom, Azure AI model, right? You can do that by swapping things out, or you can change some of the portal out as well. Now let's talk about the next steps. Brian, you want to actually come join me with this area? So to do this, right, we have to actually start it off with the foundation as a DevOps as a foundation. A lot of us developers want to start going there and start coding right away, right? In this particular case, having a Azure DevOps or some form of control system, right, as well as a board that actually controls all of us, what we're doing, etc., on a day-to-day basis is a very helpful foundational steps. It actually allow us to actually push to multi-cloud stability, right? We don't have to push to one cloud. We can be, let's be honest, right? We are in 2022 now. We can also do a lot of things like A/B switch and test as well on this type of in this. Right, we can scale, and the concept of product as a code, service as a code, and deployment, even deployment systems as a code, becomes reality. Now let's move to the next, right? And when we look at the next slide, now we're looking into things like how do we manage a project and how do we actually use versioning properly to actually create these projects well. Well, let's stop there for a second, right? Let's look at this situation with Git right now and what we're doing at Azure DevOps as well, right? Where do you think we're going with this? I'll leave this one open for some of us to answer as well.
I can tell you where they're going. So as everybody knows, Microsoft bought GitHub, and right now, what we're seeing is a strong desire and push for companies to get to GitHub and use GitHub for your repository and pipelines, and use Azure DevOps for your project management, your backlog management, and and other robust aspects of that. So right now, our advice to customers is if you are moving your platforms right now, you probably should just move to GitHub, for your repository, and build your pipelines using GitHub Actions rather than Azure DevOps. And eventually, my understanding is that the product roadmap for Microsoft is going to bring all this together, eventually, and they'll slowly deprecate out the repositories or move people into GitHub for their source code management.
Yeah, and the good thing about GitHub is that it actually works for both personal and professional life as well, right? And I have a lot of open source projects, so credibility goes back and forth between your professional life and your own personal projects as well, and people can look at it from a number of different ways, right, on how active you are as a developer as well, along the lines. Let's move forward to the next step as well, right? In this case, I want to talk about future-proofing your pipelines and future-proofing your code as well. A lot of the times, like I mentioned earlier, right, we actually get into code right away. Obviously, initially slowing down and making sure that your pipelines are set up, right, to make sure that your application is set up with the right gates and right testing, etc., is going to help you along the way and in the longer run. While it's actually tedious initially to set all of these up, right? This is going to be your key success, right? Every one of the application that we actually create will have and should have some form of testable code so that we don't actually step on each other's toes if you're writing a huge application, or if you're writing even functions, right? Like cross-functional items will not be overriding, and making sure that all the requirements are met properly as well.
Yeah, I don't think I can stress enough that the majority of projects that fail for our clients are because they haven't invested in the DevOps process up front. If you think about the benefits of automation around deployments and continuous integration and having, test cases that are truly written ahead of time, there's reasons why people have started doing it this way, and why most mature companies have gotten to a mature CI/CD process. It's because it's effective, and if you wait, 3, 4, 5, 6 sprints into your product development cycle before you start to build out that CI/CD pipeline, that's a lot of tech debt to catch up with. And it's no longer just 20 hours a week that you might have to invest, 20 hours for your team to invest a week, in order to keep this thing running on a clean cycle. Now all of a sudden you have to stop. You're going to identify issues. You're going to have to start over from the beginning in your CI/CD process, and it's an expensive process and can really derail a project.
So do that first, right? That's our recommendation.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, right, scaling on the cloud. Everything that we do nowadays, right? Obviously, cloud exists for a reason, and there is only so much your computer can do as well. Right? We talk about, powers going up to gigahertz and multiple cores. However, right, cloud is the only place that can actually scale at a push of a button. So you can actually go from a single, core machine to a multi, cores with, hundreds of terabytes worth of, data at will. The best part is this, right? Security and trust. You can actually, the cloud is fully secure for the most part, right? Anything that actually happens on cloud is typically, there is SLAs that comes along with it to make sure that things, the services are patched properly. And we don't have to actually spend the infrastructure time to actually go and, quote unquote, babysit a solution to make sure that, your solution is secure, right? A lot of the infrastructure back end that delivers your solutions are typically secured by default. And additionally, information at your fingertip. Anytime at a given, at a given time on any cloud, right? You can actually go into a portal and figure out how much money you're spending on a particular solution, what the scaling it is going to be, where the pain points are, right, ahead of time. And some, a lot of the time you can even auto scale up and down so that you can have the most efficient, solutions at a given time as well.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about what are ultimately the rewards of doing that. Like, I feel like it's true sense they're obvious, but tell us a little bit about what the rewards are of even doing these things.
One of the things I've actually seen, right, is a modular application, concept is reusable architecture, reusable code, and reusable pipelines, right? Yes, we talk about the fact that pipelines sometimes take a while to set up. However, if you actually set up a pipeline before, you can, quote unquote, copy the YAML code and change and modify a few things, and you can actually get another pipeline set up very quickly. And then you can actually now put it into a scalable solution, right, with the code reuse. Now you can actually change some of these settings, and you can be actually creating pipelines over pipelines. I wouldn't call it in your sleep, but make things a lot quicker, right? Security gets quicker as well because you're using the trusted security systems as well. Whether if you're using APM or anything else, right? Everything else is a reusable item that we're looking at. And the biggest things that we're looking at is going to be the scalable solutions that comes along with the cloud, and the patching and the lack of waking up in the middle of the night, right, thinking that I'm going to get hacked, or solutions are going to get insecure. And the biggest rewarding thing for us, right, is the tech debt. Because of the pod-based solutions that we provide, right, these people can also move around between different pods, and we can also infuse information between different pods as well, so that engineer can move from one pod to the other if needed, right, so that they can actually get additional knowledge that comes along with it as well for scaling up on new projects. Those are the beginning of many, right?
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you. This was just a great opportunity for you to dig in and show us some content that's really helping us to understand at a detailed level. How does product development look in an organization? What's it made up of? How do we think about it? Really great job breaking this down. Really appreciate your time and you helping us to understand this topic better. In terms of next steps, we would love to spend some next steps with you. We'd love to talk about how we can help you to understand product development in the context of your organization better, bringing your ideas to the table, thinking about where you can transform how you think about product development, whether it's changing the way that you deliver on your product today and you have your ideas, or even helping you create the ideas and bring them to the table. These are areas that we would love to think about your business and help you transform it. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for attending our conversation, and especially to Lewin and Brian and Eric for being as part of this conversation today and really breaking this down for us. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Nathan.
Thank you.